The morning of my sister's gala, I was folding warm laundry straight from the dryer, trying to keep my hands steady. The apartment smelled like detergent and the peppermint tea I'd forgotten on the counter. My phone was on speaker, mostly because my fingers cramped when I held it too long. A nurse from Mercy Hill called first. She said, calmly, like she'd said it 100 times before, "We need a family contact right now." I gave her my parents' numbers anyway. When she called back, her voice was lower. "They said they can't come yet. They're taking the dog out." I remember looking at a clean towel in my hands and just stopping. No anger, no tears. Just that quiet, blank pause where your body realizes something before your mind is ready to name it. A few hours later, I put on a plain black dress and slid a thick envelope into my purse. One I still hadn't opened all the way. It had my grandmother's handwriting on the front and a business card tucked inside from a man I didn't recognize. Then I drove downtown. I didn't know yet what I was going to do with any of it. I just knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't hear what I heard, and I didn't know why my grandmother had written one sentence in the corner, underlined twice, like she was speaking directly to me. Not everyone keeps their place at the table. The Fairmont Ballroom in Seattle was the kind of place that always feels a little too bright. Crystal lights overhead, soft music that never quite becomes a song. The air smelled like citrus and expensive perfume, and everything, every glass, every spoon, had been polished until it looked unreal. I parked my old Subaru a full row away from the valet line because I didn't want anyone touching it. I moved slowly through the lobby, one careful step at a time. My wrist still had that faint, sticky outline where medical tape had been earlier in the day. When I reached the check-in table outside the ballroom, a woman in a headset looked me over like she was counting problems. "Name?" she asked. "Lauren Harper," I said. Her smile appeared late, like a light switching on after a delay. "Oh, your family?" Inside, the room was packed. Cameras weren't official, but there were plenty of phones held chest high, recording in little secret rectangles. My sister, Brianna, was near the stage in a white dress that looked like it had been steamed minutes ago. She had one hand on her dog's leash, Maple, a golden retriever with a glossy coat and a collar that caught the light every time she moved. My mother spotted me before I made it to the back wall. She walked over fast, but not urgently. Her pace had that social confidence she saved for rooms like this. She kissed the air near my cheek and kept her face angled away, like she was protecting her makeup. "You actually came," she said, and it didn't land as gratitude. It landed as surprise mixed with mild inconvenience. "We weren't sure you'd manage." "I had time," I said. She did that thing she always did. Her eyes flicked down, quick to see if I looked sick. Not in a worried way, more like checking if the problem was visible. Behind her, a banner hung in neat script. Brianna Harper. Live well, live brave. It was the kind of phrase you'd see framed in a corporate lobby. From the stage, the host's voice carried cleanly over the crowd. "Tonight we celebrate an author, a philanthropist, and a voice for wellness." People clapped on cue, like they'd rehearsed it. My father stood near the front with a drink he barely touched. He nodded at people in short, efficient bursts, like he was at a networking event. When he saw me, his expression tightened, not with concern, just calculation. My sister's assistant adjusted the microphone. Someone smoothed the hem of Brianna's dress. Maple sat obediently, tail thumping softly against the carpet as if she understood the rhythm of the night. The host smiled and said, "And now, please welcome the woman who raised her, Linda Harper." My mother stepped onto the stage like it belonged to her. The spotlight found her instantly. She held the microphone with both hands and laughed lightly. "Brianna has always been our miracle," she said. It was a familiar word, miracle. It was what my parents called her when she won something, when she got attention, when she needed reassurance. I stood near the back, close enough to hear everything, far enough that no one had to look at me for long. My mother continued, "From the beginning, we knew she was meant for something big." My father joined her, voice warm in that practiced way he used with clients. "She's always put family first." I let my eyes settle on the small details instead. The way the ice clinked in glasses, the low hum of conversations, the soft click of heels against marble, the way my hand kept drifting toward my purse, where that envelope sat like extra weight. Then the host glanced out at the crowd and said, "We love a strong support system. Brianna, tell us, who's been cheering you on behind the scenes?" My sister leaned into the mic and smiled the same smile she used online. Bright, easy, and perfectly measured. "Oh, my parents, obviously," she said. "They're everything." The host laughed. "Any siblings?" Brianna's smile stayed in place, but her eyes moved past me like I was furniture. "I have a sister," she said lightly, like it was a fun fact she didn't need to expand on. "She's sensitive. We try not to overwhelm her with big events." A few people turned their heads, searching, curious. My mother added quickly, "Brianna's basically an only child in spirit. She's just always been so independent." I felt my throat tighten, but I didn't let it turn into anything else. I took a slow sip of water and kept my face neutral. In my purse, the envelope shifted when I moved, and the corner of that unfamiliar business card pressed against my fingers. I didn't look at it yet. I just stood there, listening to my family talk about loyalty, and waited for the moment the room finally gave me a reason to stop waiting. I stayed where I was while the applause rolled through the room. It came in waves, polite, steady, practiced. The kind of applause that doesn't mean much but fills space nicely. Someone brushed past me and whispered to her friend, not quietly enough, "I didn't know she had a sister." Her friend replied, "Probably for the best. You can tell Brianna's had to carry a lot." I let that pass through me without stopping it. I'd learned over time that correcting people only made them uncomfortable. Silence was easier. Silence kept things orderly. The host moved on, asking my parents about childhood memories. They told the safe stories, piano recitals I couldn't attend because I was in infusion rooms, college tours I missed because my immune system collapsed on airplanes, vacations I stayed home from because hospitals don't close for summer. Every story landed cleanly because my absence made it simpler. My body, meanwhile, was reminding me it had limits. The ballroom lights were bright enough to feel warm against my eyes. My legs ached in that dull, internal way that doesn't show on the outside. I shifted my weight slowly, careful not to draw attention. From the stage, Brianna laughed at something my father said. Maple wagged her tail, nails clicking softly against the platform she'd been given to sit on. Someone had brought a custom cushion, beige, stitched, tasteful. I thought about the nurse again, about the pause before she told me why my parents weren't coming. They're taking the dog out, not stuck in traffic, not out of town, not unreachable, just busy. The host asked for questions from the audience. A few hands went up. Soft questions about wellness routines, book inspiration, branding. Brianna answered smoothly, her voice calm and warm. She spoke about balance, boundaries, choosing peace. I noticed, for the first time, that the envelope in my purse wasn't sealed anymore. I must have opened it earlier without realizing. My thumb slid along the edge and touched paper that felt heavier than it should have. My grandmother's handwriting wasn't neat, but it was deliberate. She always pressed harder on certain words, like she wanted them to last longer. I didn't pull anything out, not yet. Instead, I watched my parents. My mother adjusted my father's sleeve before a photo. My father leaned toward Brianna when she spoke, attentive in a way I'd never seen during my doctor appointments. Their bodies angled toward her naturally, like compasses. I thought back to 3 months earlier, sitting in a small exam room that smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. The nephrologist had spoken gently, explaining numbers, percentages, timelines. I remembered nodding, asking practical questions, taking notes. "You'll need support," she'd said, "especially now." I'd called my parents in the parking lot. They'd put me on speaker. Brianna's voice had been there immediately, loud, close, complaining about a photo shoot delay. When I said the word kidneys, there was a pause, brief, uncomfortable. Then my mother had sighed. "Is this urgent?" I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't cried. I'd just said, "Yes." "Well," my father said, "let's talk later. Tonight's not a good night." Tonight, apparently, never was. Back in the ballroom, the host thanked everyone again and announced a short break before Brianna's main speech. Music swelled, people shifted, standing, checking phones, refreshing drinks. That's when my sister finally looked directly at me. Her smile tightened just a fraction. She excused herself from a conversation and walked over, heels clicking softly, Maple following. "I didn't know you were coming," she said, keeping her voice light, public, controlled. "I told Mom," I replied. Brianna tilted her head. "You should have rested." "I'm fine." She glanced at my wrist. The faint mark from the hospital band hadn't fully faded. Her eyes lingered there a second too long. "Just don't make this about you," she said quietly, still smiling. "Tonight matters." I nodded once. "I know." She seemed relieved by that answer and turned away, already smoothing herself back into place. I stood there for a moment after she left, the music filling the space where words had been. Then I reached into my purse, not to take anything out, just to feel the envelope again. The paper was warm now, like it had been waiting. I didn't move. I just waited for the next transition, because I'd learned something important over the years. Big changes don't start with noise. They start with timing. The lights dimmed slightly, the signal that the room was being gathered back together. Conversations tapered off. People returned to their seats with the quiet rustle of fabric and programs folding closed. I didn't sit. I stayed near the side aisle, where I could see the stage and the exit at the same time. Old habit, hospitals teach you to always know where the door is. The host returned to the microphone and thanked everyone again. Brianna stepped forward, one hand resting lightly on the podium, the other holding Maple's leash. The dog settled beside her without being asked. Someone in the front row smiled at that, like it proved something important. Brianna began speaking about purpose, about choosing joy, about listening to your body while also not letting fear limit you. Her voice was steady, rehearsed, but not stiff. She was good at this. I'd never doubted that. As she talked, I felt the familiar fatigue settle deeper into my muscles. Not pain exactly, just heaviness. I shifted my stance and focused on breathing evenly. That's when I noticed a man standing near the far banner, tall, dark suit, no drink in his hands. He wasn't watching Brianna, he was watching the room, the people, the reactions. When our eyes met, he didn't look away. Instead, he gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I recognized him then, not from memory, but from paper. The business card, Michael Levin, estate counsel. I hadn't spoken to him yet. He'd emailed once months ago after my grandmother passed. At the time, I hadn't been ready. I'd archived the message and told myself I'd deal with it later when things were calmer. Things never got calmer. Brianna's speech moved toward charity. She spoke about donations, about giving back, about how close kidney health was to her heart. She used careful words, supporting, raising awareness, partnering. I noticed what she didn't say. No amounts, no institutions, no timelines. People applauded anyway. As the clapping filled the room, Michael moved, not toward the stage, but toward me. His steps were unhurried, intentional. He stopped beside me like he'd planned it that way. "Ms. Harper?" he said quietly. I nodded. "Mr. Levin?" He glanced at the stage briefly, then back to me. "Your grandmother was very specific about tonight." "I figured," I said. He handed me his card again, this time turned over. There was handwriting on the back, one sentence. "She anticipated resistance. Documentation matters." I didn't ask what he meant. I already knew. He continued, still calm. "The board is present. All 7 members. They were invited under the foundation's name." I followed his gaze. I recognized 2 faces now, Dr. Elaine Morris from Mercy Hill and a woman I'd met once in the dialysis waiting room years ago, who'd lost her son. They weren't sitting together. They didn't need to be. "What happens," I asked, "if I do nothing?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Then nothing changes. The funds remain frozen. The misrepresentations continue. Your grandmother planned for that outcome too." "And if I do something?" "Then the process begins," he said. "Formally. Cleanly." I thought in steps. the way I always did when things felt overwhelming. Step 1. Confirm facts. Step 2. Let systems work. Step 3. Don't argue with people who benefit from confusion. Brianna's voice rose slightly as she reached the emotional part of her speech. She talked about resilience, about being there for family. My mother dabbed at her eyes. Michael lowered his voice. There's a folder in my briefcase, hospital records, email correspondence, financial filings, everything was verified independently. I didn't reach for anything yet. I don't want a scene, I said. You won't need one, he replied. Scenes happen when people feel exposed. All you have to do is allow the truth to be acknowledged. On stage, Brianna smiled wider and said, Family support is everything. A few people turned, almost instinctively, to look for me again. I felt the envelope in my purse one more time. This time I pulled it out, not the contents, just the envelope itself, and held it against my side. Not yet, I said. Michael nodded once. I'll be close. He stepped away and rejoined the quiet cluster near the banner, leaving me standing there with my thoughts lined up neatly for once. I wasn't angry, I wasn't scared, I was clear. And for the first time, I understood that silence wasn't something that happened to me. It was something I chose. I put the envelope back in my purse, then I waited. The room shifted after Brianna finished speaking. People stood, chairs scraped softly against the floor, glasses were refilled. The energy loosened, like everyone assumed the important part was over. That was always the moment my family relaxed. I watched my parents move toward Brianna, closing ranks around her. My mother smoothed my sister's hair. My father leaned in, speaking low, proud. Maple sat between them, perfectly still, like she understood her role. Michael stayed where he was. He didn't rush. He didn't signal me. He trusted timing. I walked toward the refreshment table and poured myself water. The glass was cool, steady in my hand. I drank slowly, grounding myself in the simple act of it. Step 1. Let them talk. My sister's publicist appeared, whispering urgently. Brianna waved her off, smiling. My parents laughed at something a donor said. From a distance, they looked exactly like the family they wanted the world to see. I felt my phone vibrate once. A message from Michael. Board members are prepared. Host will reopen the floor in 3 minutes. I turned my phone face down. Step 2. Allow the system to speak first. The host returned to the microphone, clearing her throat gently. Before we move to our final toast, we have time for 1 or 2 questions. A hand went up near the center of the room. Dr. Morris stood. Ms. Harper, she said calmly, you've spoken beautifully about supporting kidney health. Which hospitals are you currently partnering with? Brianna's smile held, but her eyes flicked briefly toward her publicist. We're in conversations, she replied. These things take time. Dr. Morris nodded. Interesting, because Mercy Hill has no record of outreach. A murmur moved through the crowd, not loud. Curious, another person stood. The National Renal Alliance hasn't received documentation either, he said. We monitor charitable claims closely. My sister laughed lightly. Administrative delays happen. Michael stepped forward then, not beside me, but into clear view of the room. As executive counsel for the Eleanor Hayes Family Foundation, he said evenly, I can clarify. My mother's head snapped up. Michael continued. The foundation has been reviewing recent access requests made under Ms. Brianna Harper's name. Brianna's posture stiffened. This isn't the time. The timing, Michael said, was specified. Silence settled, heavy but controlled. He gestured to the screen behind the stage. The slideshow changed, not dramatically, just efficiently. Public filings, dates, numbers, a registered LLC marked for profit. This entity, Michael said, has received 0 verified charitable donations, someone gasped quietly. My father took a step forward. This is inappropriate. Michael didn't look at him. All documentation is public record. Step 3. Let evidence replace debate. My phone buzzed again. Another message. If you wish to proceed, now is appropriate. I didn't feel rushed. I felt ready. I stepped forward, not quickly, not hesitantly, just enough that people noticed. I have something to add, I said. The host looked at me, uncertain. Michael nodded once. I reached into my purse and removed the envelope. This time, I opened it fully. "It's a letter," I said, "from my grandmother." Brianna shook her head sharply. "She wouldn't—" Michael spoke over her, still calm. "The letter has been authenticated." I unfolded the paper slowly. My hands were steady. "My grandmother wrote this knowing one day it might be read out loud," I said, "only if certain conditions were met." The room was quiet enough that I could hear someone inhale. I began reading, not with force, not with emotion, just clearly. "The foundation exists to support family members who show up during medical crisis." My mother's face drained of color. I didn't look at them as I continued. I looked at the paper, at the words that had waited patiently. "The board has determined," Michael added, "that those conditions were not met." A few people stood instinctively, trying to see better. Phones were no longer discreet. I finished the letter and folded it once. "I'm not here to argue," I said. "I'm here to follow the rules my grandmother set." Brianna's voice broke. "You planned this." I met her eyes for the first time that night. "No," I said. "I prepared." Michael opened his briefcase beside the stage, and that was when the room fully understood that this wasn't a family disagreement. It was a process already in motion. I stepped back. Then I waited again. The first sound after that was my mother's voice. "This is a misunderstanding," she said too quickly. "Lauren has always been fragile. She's confused." I didn't respond. I'd learned a long time ago that engaging only gave her something to push against. Michael remained where he was, hands loosely folded. "Medical records were provided directly by Mercy Hill," he said. "Dates, admissions, emergency events." The screen changed again. No commentary, just timestamps. Tuesday, 3:42 p.m. Code Blue initiated, 3:47 p.m. Cardiac arrest documented. A pause. Then another timestamp appeared beside it, 3:45 p.m. Location ping, Green Lake Loop Trail. My father's jaw tightened. "You tracked us?" "No," Michael said. "Your phones did." Brianna stepped forward suddenly, gripping the microphone. Her voice was louder now, pitched with urgency. "This is exactly what I mean. This is manipulation, turning private pain into a spectacle." I watched her carefully, the way her shoulders lifted, the way her breath shortened. She wasn't angry, she was afraid. "Lauren has always needed attention," she continued, scanning the room. "Some people don't know how to exist without being the center of a crisis." A few heads nodded, others didn't. I spoke then, not to defend myself, but to define reality. "I didn't ask anyone to stop their life," I said evenly. "I asked for presence during a medical emergency." "That's your version," my father snapped. Michael looked at him for the first time. "It's the documented version." Another slide appeared. Security footage, grainy, clear enough. My parents, my sister, and Maple walking into a cafe, laughing. My mother bending to fix the dog's leash. The timestamp glowed in the corner. 3:46 p.m. Someone in the crowd whispered, "Oh." Brianna's grip on the microphone tightened. "This proves nothing. We were told she was stable." Dr. Morris stood again. She was not. Silence followed that. Not the awkward kind, the kind that settles because nothing else fits. "This isn't fair," my mother said weakly. "We did our best." I turned slightly toward her. "Your best didn't include showing up." Brianna's voice cracked. "So what? You ruin everything? Publicly?" "No," I said. "I stopped pretending." Michael cleared his throat. "The board has voted unanimously." He read the decision without emphasis. Brianna Harper was permanently disqualified from accessing foundation funds. I was recognized as the sole beneficiary. The room didn't explode. It didn't cheer. It absorbed. My sister shook her head slowly, like the words were physically impossible. "You can't do this." "It's already done," Michael replied. My father pointed at me. "You owe us." I met his gaze calmly. "I don't." Security approached. Not aggressively, just firmly. The hotel manager spoke quietly to my parents. Policies, liability, reputation. Brianna sank into a chair, staring at her phone as notifications stacked faster than she could read. Sponsorships paused, interviews canceled. Maple stood and walked away from her, stopping near my feet. I didn't reach down. I didn't smile. I just stood there while everything that had been held in place by denial finally lost its balance. And when security escorted my family toward the exit, I didn't follow. I stayed exactly where I was, still, finished, waiting for what came after the truth. The room didn't rush back to noise right away. People stayed where they were, as if moving too quickly would break whatever had just settled into place. Michael closed his briefcase with a soft click. The sound felt final. "This decision is effective immediately," he said. "Formal notices will be sent Monday." My parents stood near the exit, my mother speaking urgently to anyone who would look at her. No one did. My father's posture had changed, shoulders tight, jaw set, like he was already rehearsing explanations that wouldn't land. Brianna stayed seated. Her phone buzzed continuously on the table beside her. She didn't answer it. She just stared at the screen, refreshing, watching numbers fall. Someone near the back murmured, "They're pulling her book." Another voice replied, "The morning shows too." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I felt a hand on my arm. Dr. Morris stood beside me, her touch brief and respectful. "You did the right thing," she said quietly. "And for what it's worth, your records are solid. We'll move forward with proper support." "Thank you," I said. Maria, the woman from the dialysis unit, stepped closer next. "If you ever need someone to sit with you," she said, "you won't be alone again." I nodded. That was enough. Security returned, this time guiding my parents and sister the rest of the way out. Brianna protested weakly, but it sounded hollow, like she already knew the ground was gone beneath her. As they passed, my mother looked at me one last time. Her face held something close to regret, but not quite. "You didn't have to do this," she said. "Yes," I replied calmly. "I did." They disappeared through the glass doors. The sound of them closing was soft. Final. The hotel staff moved efficiently after that. The banner was taken down, the lights were adjusted, the room began to empty, not in panic, but in quiet acknowledgement that the event was over. Michael handed me a thin folder. "Initial transfer documents," he said. "Nothing urgent tonight." I glanced at the cover, then tucked it under my arm. Outside, the air was cool. The city sounded the same as it always had. Traffic, distant voices, a bus hissing to a stop. Nothing dramatic. I walked to my car alone. Before getting in, I stood there for a moment with my hands resting on the roof, breathing evenly. My body felt tired but lighter, like something heavy had finally been set down. I drove home without turning on the radio. When I reached my apartment, I kicked off my shoes, poured a glass of water, and sat at the kitchen table. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt organized. I placed the folder beside my grandmother's letter and stacked them neatly. Then I washed the glass, dried it, and set it upside down on the counter. Tomorrow would have logistics, appointments, paperwork. But tonight, there was nothing left to explain. I turned off the light and let the quiet stay exactly where it was. 6 months later, my mornings look very different. I wake up early, not because my phone is ringing, but because the light comes through the kitchen window at the same angle every day. I make tea, I take my medication, I sit at the small table and read through notes without rushing. My health is stable, not perfect, just managed. And that's enough. The foundation office is quiet most days, clean desks, neutral walls, a schedule that makes sense. I spend most of my time reviewing applications and meeting people who've learned, the hard way, what it means to be left behind during illness. They don't dramatize it, neither do I. We talk about logistics, coverage gaps, transportation, who shows up and who doesn't. Then we move forward. I haven't heard from my parents. The legal boundaries held. I heard through someone else that they downsized quietly, that Brianna stopped posting, that the dog still gets walked every afternoon. I don't track any of it. What I do notice is how calm my body feels without constant justification, without waiting for approval that was never coming. Sometimes in the late afternoon, I organize files after everyone's gone home. Just paper, aligned, pens where they belong, silence doing its job. Last week, a woman came in with her teenage son. Autoimmune condition, missed appointments because his father couldn't handle hospitals. She spoke softly, like she was apologizing for existing. I told her what my grandmother once made very clear to me. You don't need permission to take care of yourself. After they left, I stood by the window for a moment and watched people cross the street below. Ordinary lives, ordinary movement, no audience, no performance. That's where things finally feel real. If you're listening to this and you've ever been told you're too much, too sick, too inconvenient, too disruptive, please hear this clearly. You're not asking for too much. You're asking the wrong people. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. And if you want to stay here with me, gently, you can like and subscribe. It helps this space grow. 2 more stories will be waiting for you next. One about an inheritance that changed hands quietly, and another about boundaries that finally held. Take care of yourself.